This afternoon I'm going to be talking about barcode bibs and book carts, putting things together at the Phillips Library. The past several years, the Phillips Library has gone through major changes, but first let me give you some background on our library. The Phillips Library is a rare book and manuscript library in Salem, Massachusetts. It is a collection made up from the former Peabody Museum of Salem, which was founded in 1799, and the Essex Institute, which was founded in 1821. These two institutions merged in 1992 and is now the Peabody Essex Museum. So how many of you are working in a historic building? Well, our library building is two historic buildings. The John Tucker Dalen House and Plummer Hall were both built in the 1850s and were attached with a connector in 1906. Because of the way the library has grown over more than 2 centuries, the collections were housed in 16 locations throughout the building, and we had 16 various classification systems, including 2 Dewey collections that were never completely integrated. Our LC print collection storage, which is our current cataloging classification, was filling up. Our stacks are closed. We had collections in the basement on up to the attic, including a 5-floor vault. Library carts had to maneuver ramps, thresholds, and 2 elevators. Prior to our projects, we had a small portion, or about 35,000, of our bibliographic records in our online catalog. We had a remaining about 125,000 items that had been cataloged in paper format only. Yes, we were still using card catalogs, and we didn't have any finding aids online. So, not only did our building need updating, but so did our catalog and the layout of our collection. In the winter of 2010, the Phillips Library was granted funding for retrospective conversion, on-site cataloging, reclassification, conversion of finding aids, and money to renovate our library building. We began our search for a library vendor. We interviewed 5 companies, and we chose Backstage Library Works. There were 5 projects within our contract. October of 2011, Thomas Forsythe and 8 technicians came on site to the Phillips Library. This included the barcoding, inventory, and data entry. As the inventory and barcoding was wrapping up, our shelves were scanned. The bibliographic team in Provo began work on the retrospective conversion and reclassification of our data. Our records were completed in 2013. March of 2012, Katie Gruther, along with 6 catalogers, set up residence in our library and began our on-site cataloging of print and manuscript materials. Allison Reed, our reclassification project manager, and her team of 8 began in our temporary facilities on September of 2013 and finished in January of 2014. Currently, Casey Cheney is working with us to convert our paper finding aids into EAD format. During all these phases, there are various issues and decisions we had to address. The inventory and retrospective conversion projects used our shelfless cards. Over the years, various amounts of information was included or not included on these cards. Some were handwritten, some were typed. Everything needed to be barcoded. We do not loan out material, so we've never barcoded anything. We would not have our retrospective records prior to our move. Therefore, Backstage, using our circulation module, created a brief record in a second database for every barcode. This would allow us the ability, if needed, to check each item out and back in during the move. During both inventory and reclassification, there was material that was flagged as I called problem children. These could include items missing, no paper records, call numbers don't match, etc. And yes, we did have a lot of these. Over the years, various cataloging processes and staffing had created an interesting mix of challenges. How many of you have gone through a move with your entire collection? Well, our physical move began on March 31st of 2013 and was completed about the 2nd week of May of 2013. 3,474 movers carts and bins using 136 trucks transported our print and manuscript collections from our old building into our temporary facility. So, June of 2014, where are we now? Well, we've moved into our temporary facility in Peabody, Massachusetts. I have loaded most of our retrospective conversion records into our online catalog. No more cards. Our print collections are now physically and intellectually integrated into LC classification. This chart illustrates our rich print collections and the subject matters. Integration has made paging much easier. This is the first time that our collections, including manuscript and print, are housed on one floor. No more ramps and thresholds. The barcoding gives our collections further security and identification, plus it helped identify items during the reclassification. We have seen an increase of 400% from researchers accessing OCLC and linking into our online catalog. 30% of our Phillips Library records in OCLC are unique. We've also rediscovered some library gems, including a wonderful Psalter from 1675, an Atlas Minor from 1607, a broadside from 1798, Washington's letter accepting the command of the armies of the United States, and a religious text with the signatures of Cotton Mather, John Winthrop, and John Hancock. Our renovation is underway in Salem on our building. So with all these projects, there's things we've learned and things that were reinforced during our project and things to think about if you're considering these types of projects. First of all, know your shelf list cards. Your data from the vendor will only be as good as your shelf list cards are. Know your batch loading system process. Test beforehand with various scenarios. Prior to the signing of your contract, know exactly what you need and how it all works so that you can communicate properly to your vendor. Be very granular, even from the start. Allow enough time to work through the entire process with your vendor prior to the signing of the contract. Think things through carefully and test them. Each library has unique processes. If your institution does something a certain way, never assume a vendor would think the same way. Communicating your procedure and expectations from the beginning is essential. Make certain that you and your vendor and your administration, most of all, are on the same page at all times with the budget. You know what the requirements are for your project, so communication is important with any replacement of personnel. You should have input. Remember, this is your project. Make certain the management at your institution, those who will be paying the bills for the work, understand what they are paying for. Plan in the beginning as to how you'll deal with problem items that have been flagged. There's no way of forecasting these numbers, but have a plan and be sure to communicate this scenario with your vendor and your management that controls your budget. You might consider adding this into your contract. Administration will not understand flagged items that require additional work and more costs once the vendor's work is complete. And the big picture can overshadow the importance of thinking granular. Let your technical cataloging staff work out the process with your vendor. Obviously, the overall picture is extremely important, but never forget the tiny little pieces that'll make your project not only successful, but less cleanup for you in the end. And teamwork. Our projects reinforced the importance of teamwork, and yes, teamwork does get you to new heights. So, the results of our Backstage projects. 119,000 items were barcoded. 119 brief records were created in a second database. 24,000 items were cataloged on site. 113,406 retrospective bibliographic records were created. 527 items were restickered, and 267,219 items were shifted. So my final thoughts. Each Backstage on-site team was different. Each on-site manager had different styles of management, but yet all were professional, hardworking, and pleasant. I would like to personally thank Allison Reed, Katie Grether, Casey Cheney, Ellen Amatangelo, Marion Carney, Nicole Arbuckle, Stephanie Hansen, Thomas Forsyth, and of course, John Reese. There was a lot of hard work that went into the past several years. Our projects were very successful. Thank you, Backstage.